The hell? Yo, what's up, folks? How's it going? Welcome to our Friday stream. Probably the last stream of 2024. So happy to see you all here. What's up? I just realized I forgot to post the reminder in Discord. So give me a sec while I do that. Meanwhile, shout out to Cosmos. Yeah, late. This is why though. Digging up references for y'all. Today I wanted to expose you to show you some cool stuff that I've been reading about, and actually just show you the source, right? Of course, we can answer questions. I can talk about taste, all of this stuff, but I want to give you guys some reading. So I'm going to be going through some tabs today. Okay. Sup Ananya, what's up Mukul? Hey Rida, what's up Vinay? Nice to see you here, bro. What's up Pratik? Yo Sajad, what's up Amog? What's up, folks? Real quick, if you're here, drop a note in the chat. Let me just, I really forgot to post this on Discord. So I just got to post a reminder. So give me 1 second. Updates. Today, I'm going to be going through this. What is taste? And in the title, one thing I mentioned is without gatekeeping. Now, I want a quick question to you guys. Why did I even include that? Why is gatekeeping a part of this conversation? I want to hear your thoughts, right? So, as soon as we're here right now, I want to ask you a question. What's the deal with gatekeeping? Why do you think I've included it in the description? So tell me that real quick. I want to see if any of you guys caught on to why. Why? Folks are like, what Discord? Bruh, यहाँ पे भी share कर दो. This is the alumni Discord, guys. So the alumni Discord, just wanted to share it there. The 10K Designers alumni Discord, as well as in our open Discord, which is not so active. Actually, it's quite active. I am not so active there, but yeah. So first up, the question I asked: why gatekeeping? Why is it a part of this conversation? Now, I want to see your answers, but first one I see from Pratik here is people keep good sources to themselves. I see a similar answer from Amog, which is good designers, or rather, let's just say certain designers out there, and they might be good, keep the best for themselves. And that's one reason for sure. But this does really connect into the taste conversation, right? Why? It's because although in theory it sounds very simple, okay? Let's start with what the 101 is, right? What is taste? Why do you need it? And I'm going to be, I want to put you all onto some stuff, okay? Okay. Let me, I think iPad would be nice for this. Let me just try that. 1 second. Here we go. This is my iPad. Oops, that's not it. A quick one on taste. So, some of these things we can talk about. This is like Taste 101, right? But beyond that, I have a bunch of tabs that I want to show you, right? So, I'm going to be showing you guys some source material, not gatekeeping from you guys, but then also opening the psychological question of why gatekeeping is even needed, okay? Or why is it kind of a default, or what does it have to do with taste, right? That's the cliffhanger. Not a cliffhanger, that's something you have to stay for, okay? I'm going to go through some of these things right now. Now, overall, folks, what it is, I'm going to put it in some very simple terms. When you have unlimited number of options out there, how do you narrow down on something specific? Let's say you are out. Let's say you have a party coming up and you have a certain dress code, or you want to wear something cool to this party. Now, this party, let's say, is happening this weekend, on this weekend, maybe Saturday night. And now you guys need to make a decision. What am I going to wear? I'm going to take a very simple example and then we'll build up from there. Now, of course, it's not enough time to place an order online, like Myntra or wherever you shop from, right? You can go to a store, but today's session is a very psychological session, right? So I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions and I want you to just think about it, right? You might have some answers. Good, right? Let's get thinking, because today's stream, guys, it is the last stream of the year. I didn't want to do all this AI and all this stuff, right? I want to talk about humans. Let's talk human psychology at its core. We'll connect that to design. We'll connect that to some practical parts about what you can do to build your taste, why taste is important, what's the taste discourse, right? There's a taste discourse that's happening. AI somewhat is connected to that as well. But let's say you have this party, you got to wear something. Number one, why is wearing something to this party even important? Right? You've got this on Saturday. Why can't I just wear whatever the hell I want, what I wear on a regular Saturday, and go there? Because, because, because as humans, we want to communicate something about ourselves when we're in social situations. You might go to a party and there are 30 people there. Very likely you're not going to be able to talk to 30 people. Let's just say, right? Maybe you're an extrovert, you will do it. Awesome. But let's say there's 100 people there, you're probably not going to speak to 100 people. However, you know, there are a certain group of people you will speak to, but then there's a bunch of people who will see you there. And like maybe you will meet them later. And even though you might not be able to talk to them, you want to communicate something about yourself, right? That's typically how it goes. Am I wrong? Now, that's just a simple example I'm giving you, right? Which is humans, we're very social creatures. And when you put us in social settings, there is a lot of communication and sub communication that happens. You're speaking to people, but at the same time, your body language is saying something about you. The intonation of your voice is saying something about you, right? If you are wearing a certain brand, that's saying something about you, right? For example, I'm wearing this brand today. Okay. Now, it's not so obvious what it's saying about me, but what exactly it's saying. So, taste, to put it in very simple terms, okay, coming to this slide here, I liked this example, which is the very practical, which said, okay, let's say you're cooking, you're a chef. In order to make delicious food, you must eat delicious food, right? If you are a chef, you're cooking for someone, hopefully you are somebody who's a foodie, right? There's this thing they say, which is never trust a skinny chef, right? It's a kind of a saying. Why do they say that? I think you guys get the idea. But overall, this is the point right here. If you are in this position where you are serving food to people, and now serving food, it's a very specific example I'm taking, right? The general example, the general normal person example I gave was something like dressing. Guys, I'll be very upfront, right? When I was maybe a teenager, or preteens, like 11 or 12, I didn't have a dressing sense or something. Like I didn't even know that was a thing, right? So I would wear whatever. I'd wear whatever, right? I'll be wearing not chappals, but I'll be wearing like sandals or something, and then I'll be wearing shorts, or or I'll just be like, yeah, okay, my parents buy my clothes, and then so I do it. But when I want you to remember this, okay? I want you to just think about this. Growing up, at some point, you realize that, yo, what I wear is important, right? And at some point, you started buying your own clothes rather than your parents buying clothes for you. And suddenly, you had to figure out, what do I buy? Because, yes, maybe your parents are paying for it, but you have this decision. What do I buy? Right? And so, a core fundamental, where a lot of this begins, right? This is just one example, is when you're growing up and you have to now cert- growing up, we have certain influences. All right. So one influence for me, for example, I remember the first time I bought my first Nike T-shirt. Right, Nike back then was really expensive as a brand, and I didn't have any Nikes, and I couldn't really ask my parents to buy me Nike. But then at the same time, I knew that the cool kids that I would hang out with, they wore Nikes. And I was like, yo, that's a cool t-shirt. I liked the design, you could say. But also, I kind of liked the brand. Like, it was cool. It was interesting. It kind of was a conversation point, right? Have you guys had an experience like that? Think about it. So, a lot of taste, like it or not, actually happens growing up, right? Your preferences for certain things, your references. So, preferences, number one, what do you like? What do you not like? Maybe there's a very simple reason, but for me, for example, a lot of my friends were into football. And so I really wanted a Nike t-shirt, but very specifically, I got a Manchester United Nike tee. Right? It wasn't a jersey. Those were like crazy expensive, but I was able to get a t-shirt. Why? Because I watched football too, and my friends and I, we would talk about it and kind of became a shared reference, right? Keywords here. A shared reference between us. And so even though that's this brand, and it, they have, of course, their marketing and whatever, just between groups of friends, that became a reference. We would watch football and we're like, hey, I've got this Manchester United t-shirt. Somebody else, he's got a Wayne Rooney, jersey or something. Somebody else got Nike. This thing, we were just, that was the scene. All right. So a lot of this taste is about expressing, a lot of what taste comes down to is firstly leaning into what your references are, what your likes and dislikes are, what are your preferences. Why did I buy a Manchester United t-shirt over Chelsea? Now, honestly, bro, I was a kid. I'm not going and seeing the sports scores or whatever. It just felt cool at the time. Like, it's just something to bond over, right? It was fun. But then what this creates, your preferences and references, it creates shared culture. Shared culture, which is you, groups of people, but then also you, or let's say me in this case, being in Bangalore and connecting to the Manchester United fandom or the scene that was global, right? Being a Man U fan for whatever reason. You guys get what I'm saying, right? It's so an example here from Sajad, right? So happy getting my first jersey. Yeah, it was a big deal. In fact, let's switch it up, right? Let's talk about cricket jerseys, for example. The first time you get a cricket jersey, where does that desire start that I want this jersey? It starts from a certain culture that has an influence on you. This culture here could just be the culture of India and cricket and sports in India, right? So, cricket. And cricket is a huge culture. And there are some shared rituals that we do around, which is watching these matches, right? Keeping up to date with what these players are doing. There's a certain shared culture, and we bond with other people over these things. And so when you get an artifact like a t-shirt, it makes you feel connected. But what it also does is it reinforces your identity. It reinforces your identity. I am a cricket fan and I'm representing India when I wear this hoodie. Not on the stage, but at least in my subgroup. Or I'm a Manchester United fan. Like, let's say you, whatever team. I'm honestly, I don't watch football. Right? I'm not. I was a Man U fan at some point because it was cool, but I just don't. I just stopped watching. But it's a shared thing, right? You guys are getting that. Now, where does taste come in? Let's come back to this iPad thing. A very simple way to think about it. What is it? Is taste is something which is very personal, number one, right? So what is it? Now, guys, I won't try to pinpoint, right? I'm gonna keep this very verbal. Okay. What is it? It's your inclination or your preferences for certain things. Why does it matter? The world we live in today, humans, socially, we have a certain culture, and taste, having a certain taste, is kind of representative of your identity. and of your culture, right? So whether that's sports, whether that's you know, like this food example here, if you're going to, and if you're hiring a private chef, let's say, and they cook a certain thing, they're known for a certain thing, it's probably because they've really, really spent time. Like, let's just, who's the top food in the food space that comes? Let's say Anthony Bourdain. Anthony Bourdain was traveling like crazy, going and experiencing these local cultures, and these were his reference points. His reference points were, this is this banh mi that you can get in Vietnam, and they would do it a certain way. And they do it a certain way, and maybe that's the, authentic, inauthentic. I don't know about that, but they do it a certain way. And, it's so special when they do it that way, and it tastes really good. And there is some culture around that. So the artifact here might just be a sandwich, right? A banh mi. Anthony Bourdain is just this person who's going and discovering this, but he's got a taste for it. You guys getting what I'm saying? So I love this particular paragraph. I just screenshotted this from somewhere. Unfortunately, I don't have the source for this paragraph. I just found it in my camera roll. I just searched for taste. This is one of the things I found. Why does it matter? In a very simple sense, why taste matters is, talking professionally, right? Like, let's switch from psychological to professional for a sec. Professionally, if you're a creative of any kind, now when I say creative, I'm using the word a little liberally, right? It's somebody who creates for a living. There is a certain audience that they have. So a chef creates food every day, takes the ingredient and assembles it into something that people can enjoy, they can bond over, right? Food, I love using food examples because it's one of those core cultural things, right? Every culture has their own food stories. They have the certain way of doing things. They've got certain emotions associated with certain types of food. So for example, right, my comfort food as somebody from from India, right, the culture of India, for me, my comfort food is rajma chawal. I love rajma chawal, right? But breaking this apart, rajma chawal is this kind of artifact. The reason I love it, yeah, it tastes amazing, but it's my comfort food because growing up, I had a lot of it. And it was kind of my favorite thing. Even today, it's kind of one of my favorite foods. And I really associate it with my mom cooking for me, right? And I love it. I love rajma chawal. I'll eat rajma chawal like 7 days of the week, right? Straight up. But food is a very global thing, right? Everybody has this culture, this taste, like literally the word taste, where it comes from is food, I think, right? Which is, you have a taste for certain things. And as your tastes expand, or rather, as you live your life, your tastes expand because you're exposed to more things. And you develop certain preferences. I like this and I don't like this. And then there's certain emotions also. I like it because it makes me feel a certain way. I dislike this because it makes me feel maybe a negative kind of way. And then when you meet somebody who has this common preferences or common culture or common tastes, you can really bond over it, right? And that creates human emotional bonds. And in the end, you want to work with somebody over the long term, you better have a good bond, right? A core part of that is trust, right? And so just know, now we're not going to talk about trust, right? Trust is we can make a huge 2-hour video on just trust alone. Just trust alone, right? It's one of those core human concepts, core human psychological, even design concept, just trust. But today we're talking about taste, right? So what happens here, developing taste, usually as you're exposed to more things in life, or you observe certain things, you observe the people who have certain tastes, these observations, they stack up, right? And talking from a purely professional perspective, in the same way you would not trust a skinny chef, if you're a designer and a client is hiring you, they expect you to have good taste, and being very specific, they expect you to have better taste than them. Think about that for a sec, right? If I'm hiring somebody and I have to tell you what looks good, bro, shouldn't you know how things look? Like, shouldn't you know what good is? For example, if I get a chef, right? I'm going to that chef's restaurant and the food is bad. And the chef supposed to care, right? They're supposed to care about it, because in the end, what you cook has to be used, has to be eaten by the person on the other end. Otherwise, it's not so good. So there is a connection between the person who creates and the person who consumes, right? And it's closely linked. Point being, why does it matter? Now, from a psychological perspective, taste is about expressing yourself in a lot of cases, right? We talked about some of these psychological, practical reasons. Um, but from a professional perspective, taste is how you show that you are a nerd about something. For example, if a client expects, let's say I'm doing website design, let's take a simple example. The client expects me to know what the trends are. We'll talk about trends and timelessness. They expect me to know, number one, what the universal principles, what's considered good, not subjective, objectively what's considered good, right? That's where it begins, right? So good taste, it kind of starts with some universal principles. So for example, what are the universal principles of design? I'll list a few of them, okay? But balance, hierarchy, these are some core universal principles, right? Like, if your design looks bad, you can look at these principles and you can probably be able to troubleshoot, right? This is not exactly subjective. It's the application of a universal principle. White space. What else? Proximity. Um, Symmetry, right? Okay, let me think of a few more. Okay, let me give you some good examples here. Rhythm, yeah. So rhythm or repetition. What else? What are some universal principles? Emphasis. So, for example, contrast. Something stands out. Um, Give me a sec, guys. I just loading up something. Hmm. Okay. Universal principles, what you're talking about, right? So, what else? Now, maybe I'll just leave it at this. Contrast could be one. Consistency. Yeah, there's consistency. Let me read the chat. What else? Focus. Focus, I'm not so sure. It is kind of a foundation, but I would say in that, let's say we're talking in terms of design, focus could probably be probably the same as emphasis. How much do you emphasize something, put something in focus, right? Accessibility, yeah, function. Usability, yeah, okay. You guys get what I mean. So, what good taste, the very first bar, the first barrier to cross is above a layman. A layman, like somebody who's a general, not a designer, might be able to look at something and say, this looks good. Or they might not be able to share an opinion at all. Right? They're like, ठीक ही तो है. ठीक ही तो है. Like, you open a certain app or open a certain website, they're gonna just read it. They're not gonna notice. In the same way that, let's say you might be in a group of people and some people are going to be looking downward. They're going to be looking at what shoes you're wearing, right? Because that's another way we signal. Everybody wears shoes, right? And not just signal, it's like, yo, you've got Jordans, right? So, for example, I saw a comment here, really want to get my first pair of Jordans. Yeah. Why? Because honestly, Jordans are really cool shoes, right? So if I am wearing shoes every day, why not wear shoes that I like? Why wear something random, right? So it's not really that we're doing it for social, you know. For example, Andrea says we're trying to subconsciously communicate based on our tastes. Kind of, but it's not really the point, is it? It's just that you're going to wear clothes every day of your life. You're going to wear shoes almost every day of your life. Why not wear shoes that you like? Why not put in that effort to actually find things that you like, right? That is called exercising your taste. Now, the psychology of it, we don't really think of that, do we? For example, I was on Instagram and I saw these ads for this Indian brand called Gully Labs. They make shoes. Honestly, I don't care that Gully Labs is not Jordan. I was just like, yo, these are pretty cool shoes. And I liked it. Now, I didn't end up buying it, but I liked it. And in that moment, I was captivated. I was like, yo, these are really cool. The details or whatever they were, right? So there's that. The thing we were talking about also um, is, yeah, a shoe needs to do certain things. It needs to be functional, right? It needs to be comfortable. It needs to have a consistent experience, right? It's not a shoe can be good sometimes and bad sometimes. It needs to have a consistent experience. It needs to last over a long time. It needs to, of course, like one shoe can't weigh more than the other, right? I'm just giving some examples. So a lot of stuff, every shoe needs to have certain core things. But beyond that, right? What are some of these core things? Like if you had to put it in terms of these principles, balance, let's say the shoe needs to be symmetric. It needs to literally weigh the same. It needs to look the same. Hierarchy. So for example, I don't want to make stuff up, but you guys get what I mean. There's certain minimum qualification they need to have to be a good shoe, a decent shoe. Otherwise, you're gonna be like, yo, I've been swindled. Like these shoes, they broke after the first time. But what happens beyond that is design. What happens beyond that is your taste. And a consumer is going to look at those shoes and they're going to feel a certain way. Firstly, there's going to be a certain perception based on how good the photo shoot is. Let's say you're going to feel a certain way. You're going to be like, wow, these shoes feel premium. Or you might look at it and be like, these shoes feel nice. Like it's an object that I want to buy. That perception, it might create desire. Like, I want this, right? We're talking about some core consumerism principles. It might evoke an emotion. So, for example, let's say something like Nikes. I loved Nike. I mean, I don't wear Nike anymore, right? I'm not so as sporty as the Nike brand is. But I kind of have the soft spot for Nike because growing up, I really had to beg my parents to buy me Nike shoes. And they were like, why should we buy you branded shoes versus not branded, right? And so a lot of that started there. But I have a certain emotion associated with it. Similarly, certain foods make us just feel really special. So there's a certain emotion associated with it. Storytelling, or the story you might tell, can also influence. So, for example, this Gully Labs example I was talking about, um, they have the story about Indian hockey and something around the aesthetics of Indian hockey and all of this stuff. Now, that's storytelling, right? They're doing it through the medium of photography and maybe videos. They're making reels about it. So, anyway, the reason I say all this is, as a consumer, we are subjected to this every single day, right? There are certain universal principles, which is things need to be, they need to work really well, they need to look good, they need to be good functional products. And there are certain universal principles for every whatever you're designing. But then beyond that, as a creator, you need to be able to create a certain perception. You need to, if there is an emotion you can tap into. So for example, nostalgia. Nostalgia is a hell of a drug, right? A strong emotion. You could tap into that emotion with a story, tell the story, right? So for example, I see a comment, uh, Jaipur Watch House, right? Interesting brand. I've seen their Insta. They have watches and they have really cool stories behind it, right? So, for example, I think if you're talking about the same brand, they have this thing where they have a watch that has like an Indian coin or something in it. And it's like they're connecting it to the heritage of India, like something like that, right? But point is, personally for me, I saw it and I was like, yeah, that's cool. I like collecting coins, so I might get it, right? In fact, it kind of goes to childhood. I used to collect coins as a kid. So for me, it really has this emotion of, yo, that's cool. But then depending on the story, I might make a purchase or not, right? Now, I see, for example, 90s or Y2K style making a major comeback. Why? It's because folks like me, I'm 31 by the way, just age reveal, right? I grew up during this time. I was born in early 90s. And so for me, the emotion this evokes is kind of nostalgia. And I'm like, oh, I remember those styles and I didn't have money back then because I was too young. I want to buy that. So the storytelling evokes a certain emotion, there's a certain perception. Similarly, for Gen Z, this might kind of represent this old world that they were never born in or they didn't have access to, but they've seen those aesthetics on their screen and now they want to have that, right? So it's nostalgia for a place or a time that didn't even belong to them, but it's still real nostalgia, right? Anyway, nice discussion. I like your comments, guys. Loving this. Um, Picking between Rameshwaram versus The Filter Coffee. Now, honestly, I have not seen the Instagram reels of either of these, right? But I'm pretty sure somebody who's coming to Bangalore and maybe is following these or comes up on Instagram, they're going to make a decision based on this, right? So, for example, I know Subco Coffee, they have amazing aesthetics, right? In fact, I should write this word down. Aesthetics. It's an important one. They've got amazing aesthetics, right? Certain element of nostalgia, but really good storytelling, certain emotions that they're connecting to. Now, when I see that, I might want to go visit them, right? And now maybe when it comes to decision, where do I go? It kind of that's top of mind for me, right? That's brand recall or um, my brand perception that leads to me making a purchase decision. A lot of it comes down to aesthetics, right? Once anybody can make good coffee, actually, no, not everybody can make good coffee. But if you're selling coffee, of course, you better make good coffee. You can't sell bad coffee because then your business is going to go down the minute people realize it's not good. But beyond that, once everybody has coffee, right, there is also this idea of a commodity. For example, coffee is kind of a commodity, right? The raw materials you're making to make coffee is everybody has access to it, right? Which makes it a commodity. Yet the perception, the emotion, the storytelling, maybe the interior design of the place, right? Maybe the unique design or the way you've made it your special point, like your USP. What's specific about this? That's what maybe makes it special and people resonate with it. Okay. Yeah. Old money, vintage era, right? Now, honestly, that's such a hard style, right? It's a certain aesthetic. I think let's take a shortcut, or not a shortcut, pivot. Let's switch to my screen right here. Mm, I'm gonna switch to my screen share. 1 second. Mm, 1 sec, guys. I'm just getting my screen share on. Oh yeah, there we go. So let me hide this. So I'm on screen share and I just opened Pinterest, right? So for example, Pinterest says be the first to know, get ahead with trends. Man, why is my screen so weird? Honestly, let's explore now. What are what's Pinterest predicting? Now, what would you call this? What would you call these? They're clearly talking about certain, you could call it movements, like certain aesthetic movements, right? Some certain trends that are popular right now. Um, Castle core. Now, what's castle core? I honestly don't know. Castle core is if you were living in a nice little castle in England, old money aesthetic. You had a bunch of books, and I don't know. I'm just piecing it together, right? But when you see this, is there a certain perception? Does it make you feel a certain way? Because honestly, I see this and I feel kind of nothing. It doesn't appeal to me as much. Maybe it's because medieval is having a major moment. And this is even more nostalgia, which is ancient castles. Personally, not a fan, right? So it doesn't appeal to me. So in this case, I would say I do not really have the taste for castle core. I don't think so. It doesn't appeal to me. Let me now try to pick something which does appeal to me, right? So let me try selecting something. Goddess complex trend, no. Cherry coded, honestly don't care. Terra Futura looks interesting. Yo, this is dope. I don't I don't need to read this. Just looking at this and just um the perception, I love it, bro. Green, one of my favorite colors, literally, right? And yeah, that just makes me feel so good. Like I one my first apartment in Copenhagen in 2021 was green. It had green walls, like this dark green walls. And I didn't paint that. It came with the house. And I loved that. It got a little dark later. Eventually, that's why we moved out. But I love that. And I don't know, green is one of my favorite colors. Now, beyond that, I'm not going to try to make stuff up. It just really appeals to me. So I really have a taste for this. If a brand were to use this, I would really stop scrolling and I would look at it. I'd be like, yo, this is awesome. What is this? I want to read more. I want to see more about it. What else? Let's open a few more. Now, there is a correlation with money, right? So, for example, um, does money inherently, so for example, a question you might have is, do people with more money have better taste? Not really, right? You can have tacky taste even if you have money. For example, I mean, I have nobody to attack here, but like you might go to somebody's house and they're like loaded or something. And then you're like, bro, look at your fucking living room. You got this weird shit, like this weird sofa. Like, I would never put that in my living room, right? At the same time, you want to kind of be nice to them. You don't want to insult their house or whatever. But I've been in certain living rooms and I'm like, bro, you live like this. Like, come on. Like, that's not cool. Get a better couch. That clearly is not comfortable. That looks like your dad's couch. Like, your dad probably would have that couch. Obviously, I'm not saying all this, I'm not roasting them. But the reason I thought about that is I see some comments going here, which is, does it limit your access to certain things? So, for example, thrifting. I saw a comment around thrifting. Thrifting is awesome. People love thrifting. Why? It's because you can get some really good stuff even if you can't afford to buy it when it was on retail, right? But more money doesn't really equal more taste. However, remember the point we were talking about earlier about identity. The thing is, with money, uh, I don't want to get too real, okay? But the richer you get, the stronger your sense of identity seems to become. I don't know if that's true. I'm just thinking through this. Old money aesthetic, it's not necessary that if you're rich, you have that, right? So, for example, somebody's like, I wish money was linked to taste, but I see billionaires buying ugly stuff all the time. Yeah. But the reason why, it still comes down to very human principles, right? They are buying that to signal something. So, for example, when you see a Balenciaga hoodie with holes in it, what they're signaling is what? Are they signaling that they're poor? Not really, right? But clearly everybody knows it's Balenciaga. So you're kind of, there is a certain thing of you're signaling identity, which is the only people who are going to notice it or is going to notice it's Balenciaga, people who already know about Balenciaga. And so they are immediately look at that and you're like, yo, that's a shared reference, right? So money does have a huge part to play with this. Honestly, status, right? Your relative positioning compared to others, your identity. A lot of this is tied to brands. A lot of this is tied to taste, right? And the reason I'm gatekeeping is in the title here is because a lot of times people use that taste as a way to gatekeep. It's like, yo, you won't know about this, right? Oh, you, bro, isko kya bata, bro, right? But then what gatekeeping is it's a confirmation or confrontation of identity. When you gatekeep, you create something called the out group, and then which implies there is an in group. And the boundary of that, you might reinforce that, which is the gate in this case. You might reinforce it using a shared reference, right? So, for example, golf clubs in India. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, golf clubs in India, you need to have like a 10-year, 20-year waiting period and you need to be referred by someone, right? So clearly they're real gatekeeping, right? They're gatekeeping that club. They're gatekeeping those acres of greens that only people who play golf can go. And in fact, people who are members can go. But what this does is it creates this thing where once you're inside these gates, there's a shared identity and your reference becomes golf. That's why golf is so old money coded, right? It's because of clubs. And that creates a certain culture and community. And honestly, I think it's just a human thing, right? There's always an in group and out group. And there's always these tribal fights between groups, or there's like, it's messy. Honestly, it's so messy. It's so complicated and messy. But yeah, that's kind of also what makes it interesting. Right? That's why we want to. That's why we feel like we want to decode this. Okay, so preferences. Checking this out. Um, let's see this player one avatar aesthetic. So okay, blue is the primary color here. But we're just talking about Y2K. You can see a Y2K reference in fashion. This is Hajime Soriyama, right? Famous artist who came up with this like really erotic robots. Like that's their kind of aesthetic. That's what they're known for. Um, but overall, it kind of there is a certain vibe you're getting here, right? So the reason I'm showing you this is because these are pretty much mood boards, right? This is what popped up when I clicked Pinterest.com, and what they're saying is these are the trends of tomorrow. Now, for it to be the trends of tomorrow, it means it's also a trend today, right? So, for example, I see this comment here um, about cherry coated, right? Now, huge apparently, and I didn't know about it, right? Personally, why? It's a little bit also because our algorithms create these boundaries, and a lot of times the invisible boundaries, right? So, something like cherry coated, you might be coming across regularly in your feeds. Good point, Sanskriti. You might be coming across regularly in your feeds, but literally we all have personalized feeds. And so if you meet somebody in real life and they're cherry coated, you're going to connect on that shared reference. Both of you had a taste for it. Where did that come from, though? Was it your inclination that led you to find this, or was it manufactured? Honestly, it's a bit of both. Yeah. So maybe let's open one more, and then I want to switch to some of these tabs. Okay. I want to take you through some of these things. Now, honestly, some of this stuff, I'm like, really, bro? I thought pickle, like this, honestly, I think ties more to that green aesthetic, right? There's a certain name for this. I think it's British Racing Green. I love British Racing Green. It's so fucking cool. Like, literally, right now, my desk mat is in this color, right? I just love this so much. Um, Pickles, though, honestly, no fucking clue. What is this, right? I'm clearly in the out group here. Um, okay, so let's come back to our maybe our iPad. So guys, are you getting what taste is? Yeah. Some idea why it's important also? Huh? Tell me. Man, I really need to set these screens up in advance. So messy. Mm, okay, there we go. So, as a designer, now, of course, I'm not a, to be honest, something that people don't really know so much about me. I don't really talk about this. But honestly, before UI UX design, I actually want to become a brand designer, right? That was actually my, maybe it started with this obsession with Nike or whatever. And then a little bit later, it was maybe Pokemon cards. Like Pokemon cards as an artifact. Now we want to, we kind of use it as a way to make friends, but also for me, I could flip the Pokemon card and I could see which one was a fake, right? And so that's a little bit attention to detail. Here, though, let's talk about this. There are things that are trends, right? So trend is kind of when it becomes a thing, right? So for example, these things, they're not really new, the mood boards we looked at, but it's a certain trend. Can you guys, for example, you guys probably know trends in graphic design, certain trends in web design as well. So for example, a trend, it's hard to name trends, right? Because we kind of feel trends. We don't really label trends as such. Like these guys are, Pinterest is. But we know nostalgia. Now, could you say nostalgia is a trend? Not really. It's kind of a core human thing. But clearly, this British racing green, that's a huge trend, right? I'm seeing that in a lot of places. Cottage core, there are these names that you create around these certain aesthetics. Certain things are trends. In web design, for example, I know that, see, you can't say something like gradients are a trend. Like that's maybe too general. And that kind of shows that, maybe you don't fully get it. That's where the gatekeeping thing comes in. It's more of, for example, you might look at a certain effect. The more you, so for example, a good way to develop taste, let's say you want to make websites, you would probably do a mood board where you would go and explore a bunch of sites, or you're probably already doing that as a designer, right? You would have exposure into certain, you keep seeing websites, right? You've seen 10 websites, 100 websites, 1,000 websites. Guys, I'll be so serious with you guys, right? This particular point right here, this one on top, man, what happened to my pencil? Yeah, glass morphism, that's a trend. Linear stripe trend. Yeah, you guys get it. Now, my pencil stopped working. Let me try this again. Okay. Now, literally, guys, the thing you want to do is if you want to go from amateur, and when I say amateur, let's say it's layman, to professional, talking more in like job terms right now, but let's just say professional, it really comes down to this thing right here on top, right? Which is when you go and no normal person checks out 100 websites a day. But if you're a designer, there will be days when you have all these tabs open and you're going on all these inspiration websites and you might have 100 tabs open. You might go through these sites, right? In fact, it's a core part of being a designer. So, how many of you guys have seen this? I need some space. Yeah. Insert space. Oops. Didn't work. Insert space. There's this classic Ira Glass-Stein quote around the gap, right? People who get into creative work, we have a good taste, and what we want to do. Oh man, this sucks. Like, I need to present this better. Okay. Anyways, I'll just leave that as a reference for you guys, right? Maybe right here. So as you are exposed to more stuff, right? Whether you're a chef going and eating different foods or you're a designer, you're checking out different sites, it's core, right? It's core you immerse yourself. You would probably consciously or subconsciously make certain observations about it, right? Like, hey, light trays is a trend. So, for example, just from the comments, bento box grids, right? Now, bento box grids, yeah, it's a popular trend. Been going on for a while. Glass morphism, right? Neopop, using retro pixels. Frutiger Aero, yeah, nostalgic. Linear or stripe brand, like flat design. Now, these are trends, right? Personally, I would say you should try to be aware of what these trends are, because a lot of times clients don't realize it, but they are very, very influenced by what the trend is, because they are consumers first, right? A lot of times, not necessarily. Clients sometimes really want trends, because trends, being up to date with trends, is how you signal that you are relevant. Trends are important for that reason. Do you guys get what I said? Knowing that something is a trend immediately puts you in the in group somewhat, right? Because you know it's a trend. How do you know it? You've seen it enough times that you recognize it and you start spotting it everywhere. And then you're like, okay, that's a trend. But clearly, a normal person maybe would not notice, right? Unless they're really exposed to it. In fact, today, a lot of normal people, let's say Reels, right? On Reels, there's this certain style, the certain editing style where it's the chill guy aesthetic, but it's like these edits with like inspirational sounding music and like fake motivational edits, right? Now that's a trend. It's popular right now. If a client is hiring you as a video editor to make some video, some marketing video, usually the goal is they want to stand out. And if they do something that is on trend, it's likely that it gets picked up, right? Because the people who've been exposed to that now kind of start wanting more. Or sometimes it's just the algorithm. The algorithm suggests more, right? So people might not say, I like this trend, but if the algorithm feels like you are now browsing a lot of this, they will recommend more, right? And so more shows up. So a lot of our taste making today happens via algorithms. However, the thing to remember, okay, is there is this idea of the personal versus the collective. A trend, you might really resonate with that because it, you know, evokes a certain emotion, or just you're just used to it. For example, you guys knew exactly what I was talking about, right? That music started playing in my mind. That fake motivation, the fake motivation reel edit. Now, maybe that trend will be gone in Jan. But right now, it's really on trend. There's this thing of personal versus collective, right? Something like this, it's a collective trend. We're all going through this together. But something to realize is you can have your own preferences, right? And a lot of taste, I want you to understand, you don't want to just consume, right? Taste is a thing that you inculcate. Okay. So let me show you an example about that. One of the articles I came across, now, guys, I've collected a bunch of these screenshots here. Honestly, I don't know if I'll be able to go through these. These are um, just some references. But a quote that I really liked was, taste is the personalizing of culture, which is, you have infinite possibilities. We live in this algorithmic time. But for you to find something that resonates with yourself, you are taking this thing and you're kind of personalizing it, right? It's your reference. So this is the screenshot around it. I'm not going to read these out, but some of these. Taste is the personalizing of culture. Taste is the personalizing of culture. Culture is the collection of ways we do things that we don't have to do. The effects that create it. Now, guys, don't take this so. I don't want to explain this to you guys, okay? But a culture is when people participate in construction of meaning making and those kind of activities. Let's not lose track here, though. Okay, I want to just convert. The next thing I want to show you guys is the actual references, like where these all come from. Okay, but the question I wanted to answer, how do you develop taste? Definitely, you need to be exposing yourself to a lot more stuff. Like, for example, if you wanted to become a food blogger, let's just say you want to make reels about awesome food in your city, you clearly have to have an interest for food, because otherwise, why would you do it at all? Number two, people probably ask you for recommendation, right? So you're known as the person in the friend group who gives the most bomb food recommendations. But the reason why is because you've tried so much stuff that your opinion carries weight, right? But it's happened through iterations. So similarly, what I will say is developing taste is about exposure. Be exposed to good resources, right? Like literally infinite rabbit holes on the internet. Your job to explore them though. They're not going to reveal themselves to you. Unless the algorithm pushes something up, in that case, yeah. But really it is this kind of iceberg, right? Like we only, a lot of us, only see what the algorithm shows us, but there's a lot of stuff usually below this iceberg. Okay, building taste, it's also about practice, it's also about iteration. So I wish it was simpler for me to just like play videos and stuff here, but let's see. Can you guys hear this? Okay, I'm gonna play something.
Everyone's software is good enough. Software used to be the weapon. Now it's just a tool. In a world of scarcity, we treasure tools. In a world of abundance, we treasure taste. The barriers to entry are low, competition is fierce, and so much of the focus has shifted. From tech to distribution, and now to something else. Taste.
Check this video out, guys. I just wanted to show you guys that we're really developing this thesis as well, collecting these examples, of course, to share in the upcoming cohort, but also for BX. BX, which is this, something we're working on. What I wanted to say though is, guys, the question I saw, which is, what's your own unique taste? If trend equals taste, it doesn't equal, they're related though. It doesn't also mean that we might certainly have similar taste. Yeah. But guys, a core human motivation, something that's very core to us humans, is figuring out how are we different, right? So a lot of taste, it's not this optional thing that we do. It's really to figure out who we are. And it maybe a little bit sometimes feel dystopian because it's so closely tied to brand and consumerism and like human psychology and using it to sell more stuff by creating a certain aesthetic. But really, guys, taste is really how we express ourselves. If I feel like I am one among, like NPC, right? If I feel like I'm NPC, like one among millions and millions of people, that's an identity crisis. You guys know what an identity crisis, right? When we become teenagers, we realize, fuck, who am I, bro? Like, who am I? Like, we all go through this experience, which is like our identities form. And then our identities either confirmed, which is we see something and our friends also have a similar thing. So we feel like we're connected. But then sometimes our identities are confronted. We're like, am I really this kind of person? Right? So it's Taste is the personalizing of culture. Culture is this thing that hangs all around us. Taste is how we personalize it, how we kind of form our identities, right? And so, again, guys, I don't want to make this sound deep, fake deep or something, right? I'm just trying to put some words together to just explain this concept. Yeah. Now, let's do this. Okay. I'm going to take you through some articles. That video that you just saw is from this article called um, so let's hide this. That article that you just saw is from, I have to open, okay, I'll just open it. Let me show you guys some interesting material, okay? So first up, it's loading. But the source for this video that I just showed you guys is this banger article by somebody in Silicon Valley named Anu. And she wrote this article called Taste is Eating Silicon Valley. And what it's talking about is over time, as it's become easier to build stuff, right? I'll just paraphrase it. You guys should check this out. This is the URL right on top. This is a paid article, by the way. It was free when it came out. It's paywall now, although it's on Internet Archive. So this is the idea. The idea is as markets get more competitive, you have to differentiate in some way, right? Like we were talking about shoes earlier. If there's a lot of shoe brands, there's Nike, Adidas, Puma, Lotto, Bata. How do you decide? When you have options, how do you decide? That decision that you take when you have a lot of options, that's a little bit you exercising your taste. Now, you might just go with Nike because you've heard about the brand. You might do it because your friends wear Nike and so you want to do it. Or you might be, fuck it, counter signal, right? So you might do signal, which is, oh, I like Nike and so I want to wear this. But then you might counter signal, like, fuck Nike, bro. Jordans are so NPC. I'm going to wear Yeezys. And then you're counter signaling to a different subgroup. But anyway, that's happening to software, right? That's the thesis in this article. The products we use, we spend a lot of time on these, on these platforms. And so clearly they influence, the way they are, it influences our behavior, our beliefs. Now, over time, at least the thesis of this article is when you want to stand out, right? Let's say with AI, it's getting easier to build apps. Now, what's going to be your moat? In the past, building apps was difficult as fuck, right? You needed to have developers who are really skilled and you need to combine a team that costs you a lot of money. You to pay their salaries and then they make an app for you. So the differentiator or the moat was money to some extent, and then it was skill. Now, let's say with AI, it's easier to make apps, or everybody has software developers now. The moat shifted to distribution, which is okay, I can create a new Facebook, but who the hell is going to use it, right? Facebook has unique, or Instagram has unique network effects that it's their distribution. But beyond that, now that everybody has distribution, we can create content and all this stuff. I'm paraphrasing, guys. I don't want to spend too much time going through. Beyond that, when it's easy to create, when distribution is no longer a moat, right? Or let's say with something like content creation, like you can now, the costs of creating, let's say, an anime have gone down. You could use these AI tools theoretically. You'll still have to exercise your taste, right? Like somebody without, let's not say without taste, right? Somebody who's not a nerd about anime, they might use these AI tools to make something, probably not going to be good. But somebody who's a nerd about anime and knows all the references and knows the cool art styles and which anime is the best, which directors are the best, they might be able to create better prompts and create better outputs, right? So taste becomes a differentiator once everybody has tools. Similarly, and that's not just AI, right? Let's say something like Photoshop. You guys know in India, there are these, coaching center type of things where they teach you 10 tools. They'll be like Blender, Maya, 3D, or Photoshop. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? But clearly, somebody who knows Photoshop, that's the tool. But creating something, you need to have taste. So what they do is they make you go through a bunch of references as well, right? They say, what are these trends? And then you use the tool to kind of replicate these trends. Why? It's because you're practicing and you're also absorbing a lot more. Taste is not something that is built passively. It's active involvement, right? So taking that example earlier of food, you can't just passively make an opinion about food. You need to go out there and eat. You need to make observations. You need to make judgments. Those of you who watch Mad Men, right? Season 6. Do you guys know Mad Men? Watched it? Season 6, there's one episode where they're in a client meeting, and I think it's Don and Peggy and a bunch of other folks. And they have two options, right? And so the two creative directors, Ted Chaw and Don Draper, they're like, "Ah, we want to pick." And this is for a women's brand. And so Peggy walks in and they ask her for her opinion. Which of these should we go with? And you know what she says? She says they're both good. And they both get pissed off. Both these creative directors, they get pissed off at her. Now, from Peggy's perspective, what she was trying to say is, if I take your side, I am siding with you. And then so I'm going to clash with this other person. And so I'm going to take the safe option of just saying they're both good. But later in the thing, when Dawn is alone with Peggy and he's like, what the hell was that? As a creative, you are paid to have an opinion. You can't say it's all good. You can't say chalta hai. You can't say, oh, whatever, my mom bought this t-shirt for me. No. You have to have taste and you have to exercise that taste, right? You need to have an opinion. Anyway, that's one example from Edwin. I just remember that scene because I'm rewatching the show. So I just remembered, I watched that recently. Why am I talking about that? Um, it's because building taste is an active process, right? That's what I'm trying to say. It's not easy for us to actually, it's very easy for us to have opinions, right? But a lot of times we're afraid to express it, especially in professional settings, right? For example, you're like, oh, I want to tell my boss this is good, but they're not going to agree with it, or they just don't get it. And so sometimes creatives create this us versus them scenario where it's like them on one side. Oh, creative people, we get it, bro. We get it. We're so cool. Bosses, they don't know what the fuck is going on. They're like, make it pop. They're like, maza aana chahiye, feel nahi aa rahi. Honestly, though, these guys are paying you the money. Why? Because you have good taste. You're supposed to have an opinion, but also you're supposed to have an understanding of when to follow the trend, signaling, when to reject the trend, counter signaling, right? So, for example, if something is a trend, as a brand, you have the option to counter signal that trend and go opposite, right? And that will attract an equal group of people. But as a creative, need to have a strong opinion. Now, to have a strong opinion, or rather any opinion at all, you need to have gone through enough iterations. You need to have tried enough stuff to be able to give an informed opinion, right? So let me take a little bit more technical example. I was working with and this is like way back, but let's just take this, right? I was working with a client, and what they said was it was a particular flow we were designing, and they were like, should we use? So they were like, let's imagine a course page, right? So this was, I think, Unacademy, but this keeps happening. Client scenario: you're a designer on Academy, you're designing some feature, and now you have to decide, okay, one option, it's a course page. One option is you have sections. So about this course, schedule, something, and it's a scroll. And users have to scroll through this to see the information. And at the end, they have FAQs and you can buy it. The other option, this is an iteration you made, is we have this, but we put it in tabs instead, right? So instead of scrolling to see the information, you have to switch tabs. This is a very common kind of decision you might be faced with, right? Let's say you're designing an e-commerce website. Now, should you just put everything as one long scroll, all the benefits? Oh, this has this cotton, it's made of this material, you can do this with it, it's waterproof, this, that. Should you put it all into a long scroll? Or should you break this up into tabs? So, about, material, information. Now, obviously, there's not just two ways of doing this, right? When we're designing these information systems, right, talking core UX here, what we have to figure out is what the user's motivations here are. But then what's the goal of the system? The goal of the system is to get you to buy in this case. Now, if you have to decide between this, now it might be hard to realize like where does taste come in? It's not like I'm being like this is cool and this is not cool, right? So taste is not always about status and identity. Here, you would first weigh the functionality of two. Now, from a functional perspective, the scroll increases the length of the page. Here, the information there it's put sideways, right? So they're tabs. However, as an expert, you might also know this, right, through experience, or maybe you've been taught this in the cohort or whatever. Most of the times, people don't go through these tabs, right? So you might have 100% of people landing on first tab, and then 60% of them will click the second tab, and then 30% will click the third tab. And so whatever's in the later tabs won't get read. You might also realize, hey, I saw this other example where somebody combined these two approaches. So they took the best of both. So most e-commerce sites are just a scroll. You keep scrolling, and that's how you discover information. And maybe there's a sticky call to action, right? So the button is not all the way at the bottom, it's always sticking to the bottom of the screen. Visualize, guys. I'm really trying to build your visualization power, right? But then if somebody wants to jump to the second section, you can also have tabs here that auto scroll. And instead of putting the information in tabs like this, you put the tabs like this, but clicking on it scrolls you in position. Now, how do you decide? You weigh the two options against each other. The personal thing here, it's not so much about my personal preference or my taste. This is cool, that's cool. It's also my domain expertise in the back. So I'm going to say, hey, in the last project, we tried that and it did not perform so well. Or you might point to the industry. So the industry trend. So let's now do a comparative research. Let's go see, very classic cliche at this point is how does Airbnb do it? Do you guys know why people say that, by the way? Why is Airbnb kind of considered this gold standard for design? Like, hey, let's go. By the way, this thing we're talking about, it's called design patterns, right? It's a core part of UX design patterns. Why is Airbnb considered? Guys, you might not know this. In fact, I didn't know this till a few weeks back. A lot of the ex Steve Jobs crew has now been recruited by Apple. I mean, that was at Apple. Ex Steve Jobs crew is now at Airbnb. So maybe that's one of the reasons. But other than that, Airbnb has awesome design. Like clearly they have good taste, right? So again, we don't want to copy Airbnb because that would be just copying the trend. But we want to make a proper analysis of what does an industry leader, how do they do it? So maybe that creates one benchmark that we can compare against. And then you might say 2, 3 others. So how do e-commerce sites do it? How do travel sites do it? How do whatever's closest to your domain? And then in the end, you will make a decision. And guys, why a lot of, you know, some people, they just be like, hey, let's A/B test this. A little bit why A/B testing has a little bit of a bad rep. Number one, because you need to have a lot of users to A/B test to get statistical significance. But other than that, A/B test is a lazy way of saying I don't want to decide. Let's just push both. It's not having an opinion, right? Honestly, A/B test it's not the way to go, right? Like if I'm getting 1,000 users on my site and I show both of these, firstly, I have to develop both of these, but then it might not be statistically significant. Let's say 60% people do this, but then when 10,000 users scales to 100,000 users, that behavior might not persist, right? Anyway, so decision making in design, a lot of it It's sometimes called judgment, sometimes called market research, benchmark, and all of this. It's not exactly 100% taste from the status, identity, visual design kind of perspective. But in the end, we do look at the. Okay, I think we went on that for long enough. What we were talking about is there is subjectivity sometimes because people might not understand or align with certain stuff, right? So there is something like a taste alignment. But in the end, clients do care about taste from this perspective. They want you to have good design. They want you to tell them what's good. Um, but also, this is kind of where we have to adjust our expectations, like get feedback, not take it. Taste can sometimes be very closely tied to identity. So if you've heard this thing of, oh, bro, creative people are assholes, a lot of times it's because creative people might sometimes feel challenged, right? When somebody says that's not good, because they kind of take it as a threat to their identity. Like, bro, how did you say that to me? Mujhe kaise bol diya, right? Anyways, hope I'm not rambling, okay? Because I hope you guys are getting what I'm saying. Because I'm going to go through some more references now. So, number one, dope article. Check this out. Array, where's the article? This one. The next one I want to show you. Um, let's see, which one should I open? Um, this quote that I said, taste is the personalizing of culture. This is the source. So interesting, right? I'm just to explain the discourse a little bit. This went viral on Twitter. I also, okay, just show you when that happened. This happened a few months back. In a world of scarcity, we treasure tools. World of abundance, we treasure taste. I just shared this highlighted thing. So my tweet also went viral. So that's what I got out of it. But this was a huge discourse, right? So there was founder mode discourse, which happened earlier this year, but also taste. This is the author, right? So based on this article, we made that video. Now, the counter signal to this, right? Of course, there has to be when there's a signaling. Again, I'm not saying this is signaling, but not everybody agrees with this, or a lot of people think this is wrong, or there's something like they have their own point of view, right? And so the counter article to this was this one, which is taste is the personalizing of culture, right? And a lot of these things we talked about today, this is where I got it from, which is what is a culture, right? We do meaning making. Taste is the personalizing of culture. We engage in the massiveness of culture every day, even though we're sitting in India, Bangalore, wherever you might be. We consume a lot of these other cities and these other art movements, trends through our screens. And what this does is we consume this culture, and taste either confirms or confronts our identity, right? So if something is trending and we love it, we feel good about it. If something is trending and we hate it, it's a confrontation, right? It's maybe not directly to your identity, but you don't like that, right? So there is this personal thing here, which is people respond to this overall culture that, in fact, who creates culture? It's us only, right? Um, so one classic, it's not called this. Um, it's not this, bro. Fuck. Okay, maybe we'll find it. There's this classic diagram of how culture is created and how fast it moves. Let's see if we can find that. Okay, it might be in one of these sources. But taste is a cultivation of these personal effects. It makes you feel connected or disconnected from culture, right? Um, you might. Okay. Anyways, let's go beyond. Steve Jobs, right? Now, of course, Apple is a crazy example, but how this taste is personal life culture, how it's relevant here is we know this story, which is Apple computers were the first to have custom fonts. And where that came from is Steve Jobs taking these classes on campus, which are typography classes. And he realized, wait, why do computers have just one font? We should have this, the experience would be better. So there's some personal experience that he went through. And then he put that out into the world, and it kind of created the status quo. Now, of course, we all have fonts and stuff, right? But again, it's an example of applied taste, right? And with taste, it's not really about good and bad. It's more about how people perceive it. Okay, I don't want to get into good or bad stuff actually. Amazing article, by the way. I can't do justice to it just on this stream. I will say check it out. But basically, what he says is taste in technology. Everybody has the same taste because what people think. Firstly, we all copy each other. Okay, so if some effect goes crazy, everybody's going to copy it. So for example, some of these trends we were talking about, these web design trends, glass morphism and whatever, they don't really look good, but the reason people are influenced by it is because the people who were really good at their craft, they created something that was so awesome, people resonated with it, they loved it, and then this happened, right? We want to replicate stuff that we like. What he's talking about in this article, um, is that criticism of taste in tech. Basically, what he's trying to say is tech bros don't have taste. Now, in some ways, this is also a San Francisco versus New York discourse, right? Reggie is somebody who's in New York, Anu is in SF. New York people think SF people have no taste. New York people, there was literally a tweet that says, look at the shoes, which is New York people will look at the shoes of the tech people and they'll be wearing some, On or one of those lame brands. And New York people will be like, oh, you're an outsider, right? Whatever. Status plays, right? What he talks about is also the reason for gatekeeping is because people copy and they don't attribute, right? Although that's not the main thing he's saying. Um, the ex Apple thing, this is where I found it, which is he's like, if you got the sauce, you want people to pay you for the sauce. So a little bit you want to gatekeep. There's this very popular video on YouTube, which is called Why Designers Are Elitist Jerks or something, by the channel called Design Theory. You might have seen it in your recommendations, maybe you watched it. But basically, it talks about why are designers elitist jerks. In some ways, it's a 30-minute video, right? So you can go watch that if you're interested. But it kind of comes down to this. if you have the if somebody digitally does not have that sauce, like they should pay us for it if we have good taste. In this case, though, Brian Chesky, for example, um, guys, I'm getting bored talking about this, okay, because I've already read this stuff. But anyway, I'll go a little fast. So check this out. This is an interesting article, okay? In fact, he didn't even want to write it, but he did. That's the next one. Folks, with me so far? Yeah, can I keep going? Let me just check my stream. Okay. And yeah, the Airbnb CEOs are designers as well. So clearly it does come from the top. Even my own personal experience, when I worked with Gaurav, who's the founder of Unacademy, the reason I loved working with him, bro, cool guy, right? He's hardcore business. Like, he's so good at what he does. But beyond that, he has good taste. So, for example, I never needed to fight with him about, oh, we should do this. And he's like, no, no, do this other thing. Because we kind of resonated on that. Like, he had really good taste. And so what that also meant was he was not just he cared about design, and he had amazing references that he would point to, right? And basically he understood the value of design, to put it in simple terms. This article, guys, now this goes deep, okay, and to the point where there's a lot of references here to US brands and stuff that you might not 100% get, but trust me, if this feels interesting to you, worth going deep. Okay, this is a very interesting essay. It's called Life After Lifestyle. Basically, how this starts is, you know how brands kind of have this. Firstly, brands are looking similar. I don't know if you guys noticed this, right? There's this blending going on where a lot of brands are simplifying their fonts and they're becoming so similar. And it kind of beats the purpose in a way, right? Which is, as a brand, you want to stand out. So why are brands becoming so similar? Interesting thing to think about. But what he talks about is there's also this ideology that's kind of become kind of mainstream now, which is, for example, this example of Shipped. Shipped isn't just a delivery service. It's a super detailed, expert level, highly knowledgeable ideology. Now, guys, it's still a delivery service, right? But a lot of times there's this lore or narrative that's created around brands. Um, anyway, I will not go deep into this, but dope article, so fucking good. Um, it talks about life after lifestyle. It talks about what, now that we are in this kind of, it's written in 2022, so it is quite recent. It's got some amazing, for example, diagrams. So about understanding culture. So, for example, what are the elements of culture? So, taking, you know, um, Pokemon as an example, right? Pokemon, there's a certain culture around it. Now, the places here, it might be the places you go to play cards, it might be the Pokemon centers. The artifacts, it's your Pokemon cards, it's your Pokemon merch. It is the, the electronic card ECG, where you're getting these digital Pokemon cards as well. It's Pokemon Go. Um, the actors here, I don't know what this comes to, but there are characters basically. There are practices, certain, every culture has certain practices, right? So it's got certain things which are okay, things are not. There's certain rituals around it, certain narratives, there's certain knowledge that people on the in group know. What's happening? Something with my screen share. So, anyway, interesting one. Um, it also talks about, like, the main thing it's talking about is how the similarity seems to be eating up. And so, what the future of brands might look like now that there's the sameness. But then also, it talks about how even commodity brands are becoming lifestyle brands, right? So, for example, you're not buying a shoe, you're buying the lifestyle that comes around the shoe, right? So, in some ways, consumerism, it's how we show our taste, of course, but it kind of creates this identity. And a lot of commodity brands kind of become lifestyle brands. So, for example, somebody who, I don't want to give example. I'll give you an example if I think of, but okay, good article. Beyond that, this one, I've not actually read. It's been recommended to me, but this is from 2023. I still have to read this, so I can't say anything about it. I thought I might read it on stream, but it's going to take me a while. The Taste Economy. This is from 2023. Beyond that, a good classic one is Virgil Abloh's Harvard Graduate School of Design. His talks, I think there's multiple that he's done with Harvard alone. Let's see. This is more common example. Okay, um, I would love to talk about it, but I honestly think you should go and watch it. Um, Some of this other stuff I'm still going through. I don't think I'm going to read it. The reason fashion is so interesting also is I think fashion, we all wear clothes, we all wear shoes. It's one of the core ways that people express their taste, express their preferences. Um, okay, guys, I'm going to skip this. I am yet to read this article actually. This one, guys, this is from 2019. This talks about how, we were talking about taste and this gatekeeping. And so there's group, in group, out group. This one goes deep into status, right? So, for example, if you have more followers on a platform, you have more status on that platform. Yet, the way to get followers on each platform is different, right? So, this one goes deep into status and network effects, right? So, when you're building an app, yes, it has utility, could have entertainment, but also has an element of social capital, right? If you have followers, there is such a social capital that the app bestows upon you. Now, guys, let me just say straight up, none of this is like 101, right? None of this is like, I know some designers, you guys might be watching this and be like, fuck, am I supposed to know all this? You're not supposed to know all this. Like, I found this like maybe 7 years into being a designer, right? It's just constant process of discovery. It's understanding culture, and culture is changing and morphing into new things all the time. But one example here that you can see is back in the day, there was this site called Favestar, and it showed you what the tweet of the day was, right? Because Twitter's feed was not algorithmic, so you would only see the people you were following. So this 2011 website would show the most popular um, tweet, and then that became a. Anyway, you guys can read this. This is huge, by the way. Like when I say huge, it's like a 3 hour read. It's deep, and I don't even think I've read the whole thing. Maybe I have, but like this, it's so much. I kind of feel like I don't even remember parts of this. Um, it talks about the idea of gamification, like how when you design certain features, it affects behavior. That's the core of it, of course, but also how it affects relative positions of users and how that creates certain dynamics. Now, that happens in the real world, but when you're designing these platforms, especially at this level, it's even crazier, right? For example, if the question were to ask you is this friend emojis on Snapchat, all of you guys know this. Of course, you know this. But what's the purpose of this? Now, the simple answer might be, oh, it's for engagement. It's a very cliche thing to say, bro, for engagement. What do you mean by that? Can you break down, as a designer, a challenge to you is, can you break down to some satisfying conclusion what the reason for this is and how it psychologically affects people? We know this, that people maintain their streaks on Snapchat, right? So, for example, bro, I don't know when my Snapchat, I mean, never looked like this, but yeah, I maintain streaks like 10, 20, 30 when I used to use Snapchat back in the day. But a lot of people, their Snapchat looks like this. Now, this is a behavior people have. So, if this app has influenced this behavior, as a designer, can you break apart and figure out why or how? Like, what exactly are the mechanics behind it, right? That's what's so interesting about it. Yeah. And honestly, you might not be happy with what you find. That's the other thing I'll say about this. Like, it's always so, like, it's intellectually very stimulating to read this stuff and go deep into it. But a lot of times when you realize it's depressing. Like, it feels like, what the fuck, bro? Like, oh my god, like that's the reality we live in. Like it's kind of like you feel suddenly unrelatable or something. It's like a lot of times you realize this stuff and you're like, fuck, bro, like I wish I didn't know that. I wish I didn't know that. Like, I can't use these platforms as a normal person anymore. Not always true, but it happens. Like a lot of times, folks, I'll be very honest with you. A lot of times I can't watch YouTube. Like, I'm back home, I'm sitting on my sofa. I just want to watch YouTube. But I can't because my mind is like, oh, that's a good thumbnail idea, bro. You should use that. Or, oh, that's a nice title idea. Or, oh, the intro. Like, I can't shut off that side. And so I can't enjoy YouTube. Not always, a lot of times. Anyway, side note. This one goes deep into social games. When I say games, I'm talking more about the human games, status games, so to say, on these platforms. Crazy article, bro. And network effects, of course. Another interesting site now, another interesting site that you guys might find interesting site that you might find interesting. Interesting site that might have you going like, what the fuck? Like, yo, like, are people overthinking or am I dumb for not knowing this, right? That's how I feel when I see this kind of K-hole. These guys, they publish these reports and I'll let you go through it, okay? I wish I could go through one of these. I mean, I could. Let's see. Let's open their PDF. Now, guys, if I was a little bit more prepared for today's stream, I would have put together a fig jam with all of these resources. Maybe I still will do that, but not right now. Array, wrong. It's my downloads. K-hole. This is a 50-page report called the K-hole brand anxiety matrix. And I'm like, yo, okay, let's go through this together. What year is this from? Firstly, let me brand identity matrix. Okay, not sure. But this is just a deep resource, okay? I don't know how practical this will be because this has um, a lot of US examples and US references. But basically, this got this 2 by 2, which is a brand that's legible, people can understand, illegible, a brand that tends towards order versus chaos. And it tries to go through this um, for different brands, I guess. Now, I'm a nerd about brands, but I found this, they out nerded me on this one. I was like, yo, you guys are on one. Okay, let's skip this. Let's move forward. Mm, another interesting one. I think maybe this is way too much, so maybe let me load it first. I feel like maybe this is way too much to actually cover on a stream. So I might have to gatekeep y'all. I might have to gatekeep y'all from these remaining tabs, these remaining resources. But this is raw article. So the Substack is Taste 101. I've not read it, by the way. I've saved it for reading. So just thought I'll show you guys. But it talks about the praise of gatekeeping. And the reason why it says is we need gatekeepers to resist cultural hyper optimization, things becoming the same. Okay. And how gatekeeping actually helps with that. So I'm going to read this sometime soon. I've not yet read it. But yeah, whatever. How to develop taste. This was a nice one as well. Not exactly from a tech perspective, but nice 10 steps how to develop taste. So I'll let you guys read this. Okay. Let's come to a product design POV. Okay. This was a very interesting one. Now I'm going to have to open up Internet Archive for this because this is a paid article. This is by Scott Belsky, founder of Behance, works for Adobe. Basically, he talks about this idea of luxury software. Now, which is as what's the next phase? Maybe it's luxury software. And what exactly is the definition of luxury software? Why it might be we're headed towards. See, I can't say yet whether I agree with this or disagree with this, right? Because a lot of people, let's just say people are on both sides. Personally, for me, I still have to form an opinion. I'm yet to form an opinion. Although, if you really think about it, there are examples of this. So in the same way that you could buy a scarf from Hermes, now that's a luxury scarf, luxury item. It costs a couple $100. maybe a couple $1,000. Versus you can buy a regular scarf. The thesis is that that's happening for software. And one example of this would be something like Superhuman or even Arc browser, right? Now, of course, Arc browser, it's free. They've shut it down. They're making something else. But Superhuman, you're paying $30 a month for email, right? So that's like $360 a year just for email. And now, yeah, everybody, they could use Gmail, right? But that's an example, frequently used example of luxury software where they've carved a niche and they are saying we are for power users of email, and yeah, you pay that premium because you're a nerd about email. Okay, it's not a paid article, by the way. It seems to, the whole thing seems to be here. Okay, guys, enough. I think let's do Q&A. Let's do some Q&A. We wrap up in a bit. This is the last stream of the year, so I also want to have some interesting back and forth. Don't want to monologue this. Okay, guys, that's about it. One thing I will also plug is we are working on something. We just released this. It's bxmuseum.com. Now, guys, it's not like I'm gatekeeping this or something, but we've not really made a huge scene about this, right? This is still pretty low key. Most people don't know we actually launched this. But what it is it's a huge repository of artifacts. You know how we were talking about this idea that a lot of taste is about your preferences, but then your preferences are shaped by culture. And usually the way you interact with culture is through objects, right? And so, I mean, you can think about it from that way. The other way you can think about it is if you are exploring brands, you're designing brands, what, and if you're mood boarding for something, a lot of these are just rare references for you, right? And we've tastefully, which is with a lot of effort and curation, put these together for you. So, for example, if you want to check out, like, let me show you something cool, okay? Let's look at Air India. Now, guys, we have 68 artifacts from Air India. But just to give you a visual, check this out, right? We've kind of curated these nostalgic, you could say, but it's really rare resources. For example, Air India used to have a lot of these city based campaigns. A lot of these would go so hard today, right? This is, even though this was made years ago, decades ago, so relevant, this style. I don't know. Some rare resources as well, like, for example, did you know there was something called the Maharaja class, which was even better than first class? So, a lot of windows had this Indian style. You can see this ornamentation on top, this thing here. But yeah, this is the Maharaja class pictures, the first class and executive cabin. Got this. Now we're getting into current Air India. But yeah, anyway, something interesting. We've created some categories as well if you want to browse. So we've got, so here on filters, you can, for example, see lifestyle brands. We only have one or what? For example, F&B. We've got some, anyway, work in progress. We've added a bunch of brands here. Check this out, okay? And the other thing I will say is I want you to go download the BX cheat sheet. So we also actually put together a free resource that you can go just enter your email. We'll just send it to you. We'll send you a PDF. It's like it's got resources basically, right? If you want to just enhance your creative aura. But honestly, it's just a bunch of resources to help you go deep into the fundamentals. So things like typography, storytelling, narrative. You can check it out here. Chalo guys, maza aaya. Nice session today. Mukul says, hey, what's up, Mukul? Any more suggestions of what to do before C10? Honestly, Mukul, The real journey starts once you're enrolled, right? So right now, my main suggestion is get as good with Figma as you can. The reason I say so is you don't really need somebody to teach you Figma. It's just a matter of trying stuff out and really pushing yourself. Uh, I sent an email just today, by the way, to the folks who've enrolled in cohort 10. Some suggestions on what to do. Of course, start Figma, but also recreate some stuff, try some stuff out. So check that out, right? Figma would be my main suggestion. Other than that, relax, bro. December, at least, rest and relaxation, right? I want you to be ready for the cohort when it starts. Um, Jan 18th is when we start. And folks, if you're considering enrolling, by the way, applications still open, although we're very close to closing them. Um, it's on the site. Check it out. All right, folks. Any questions? Any questions you want to talk about? We'll close in maybe 10 minutes, okay? BX Museum is real good. Been exploring since it came out. Awesome. Glad to hear that. There is a feature that lets you even copy paste to kind of copy paste to your FigJam mood boards and stuff. So um, hope you're able to use it in a real client project sometime as part of your mood boarding and references, or just for inspo, right? Is there financial aid or something for the cohort? We do have a partial scholarship of $15,000 for people who have portfolios, but it's competitive. We only have like 10 of those scholarships. But no, we unfortunately don't have any other um, scholarships. Yo, what's up, guys? Going through some more. Kev says, hey, Abhinav, trying to create a case study for Zomato Z Meet concept in which people can meet strangers and have a meal together. Is it a good idea? Really, it depends on your execution, right? Like, two people who do the exact same idea could end up with like, very different directions, right? So, I can't tell you if it's a good idea. What I can tell you, though, is it's a challenging idea because, as most good ideas are, right? But my main question for you would be, under what circumstances do people want to meet strangers? So, how do I use Zomato? Let's say I can use it in the morning, breakfast, lunch when I'm in the office, dinner when I come back home. Now, these three scenarios, I don't want to meet strangers and eat with them. First one, I'm trying to get to work, so I just want to order. Second one, I'm in office, I don't want to go out, leave my office, and the boss is like, what's up? Third one, I'm home, I'm tired, I just want to eat so that I can chill. So, you really want to think about, here's the thing, right? You can design the feature. Yeah, it'll be quite challenging, but you also want to think about the viability of the feature. So in this case, I would say maybe this sounds like an interesting possible feature for the district app in Zomato, right? Because the district app is about events. And so an event, a type of event you could have is, it exists in the real world like potlucks, just um, people bring their dishes and you have a party and it's potluck. But the point is, Kev, you want to think about the human side of this, right? Of course, there's a whole app side. You have to figure out the flows. Can anybody create one? Um, Number one, can I create a group? Can I join a group? Is it just two people? Because that can get awkward. It can get unsafe. Number three, under what scenario, right? Where in the app does it show up? What subsection of the app? But then there's also the human side, right? Sharing a meal is a very intimate thing. I don't want to share a meal with my enemy, let's say, or somebody who is not friendly, or somebody who's a perceived risk. In simple terms, there needs to be some trust to be able to share meals, right? Sharing meals is something you only do with your friends, family, or you know somebody and they invited somebody and so you do it. So really the viability of such a feature, yes, there's a whole product aspect, but little bit you want to find, and again, I'm not saying do all this exploration to end up with nothing, right? Because it does seem difficult. You want to find that one keyhole right? You want to find just a wedge you can get in, which is, yeah, it might not make sense, but in this specific scenario, it could. And if it works here, it could become a wedge into something bigger. My guess, probably in the district app. And I maybe would not let anybody create a group, right? So if some random guy creates a group, how the hell do I know? Like, matching is a problem. How do you match people, right? Is the trust problem. Now, yeah, you can go Tinder where you can match people, but then a little bit, what's the scenario here? Am I really picking a person? Am I picking the food? Am I picking the place I'm going to eat? Also, big social dynamics between when it's two people and they're strangers, three people, all strangers. What's the group size, right? So all these things you have to think about. But then the reason, it makes it a very good problem statement, to be honest. So your question about is it a good idea? It's at least a very thought-provoking problem statement. And so I think you should definitely do this, definitely attempt it to figure out how can I make this happen, right? Because it's difficult, but there is some scenario where it might work, and there is some certain arrangement of this that people might enjoy. And if nothing, it's a mental exercise, guys. You realize we solve puzzles all the time as designers. We're solving puzzles all the time. A lot of these are psychological puzzles, how people behave, what people think. Will they accept something? Will they reject something? Puzzles around how exactly does the system work, the product side of it, the how things are arranged, and then also the visuals of it. So challenging one, but yeah, interesting. I'm glad we were able to brainstorm it a little bit. Those of you who were, everybody else who's seeing this, what do you guys think of this idea? Now, don't say good or bad, but yeah, think about it. It's a good mental exercise, though. I'm still thinking about it. Like, what could be an interesting scenario? Because think about it this way, right? Let's say if there was in district, there was a type of event which was in the end, I might not trust a random person, go eat food with them. But if somebody who is like a taste maker, right? So somebody who they have a good profile, maybe they're a celebrity chef or something, and you can just go join that group, and then a little bit it takes away. Like, basically, the thing you want to think about on the human side of this is what doubts, fears, hesitations will people have, and those doubts, fears, hesitation could really make this a feature not work, or it might not. People might not want to try it. How can you make people try it? Under what conditions? But how do you pitch this, right? Because guys, this is happening, by the way, right? So for example, I see this comment by Shaunak. Similar app made by a French guy, don't know, but started as a WhatsApp group where he would match them. You guys know about this concept of supper clubs, right? So for example, I went to one recently called Dastar Kwan, by this guy Akash and Nupur. Okay, but basically there's a lot of these supper clubs now in Bangalore, but I'm assuming some other cities as well, where they have a group and they do these curated dinners, and like it's like they either get a celebrity chef or something, and they're running unique events, right? Experiences. So honestly, I think, I don't know if it can work as a matchmaking thing. I'm not able to imagine that right now. But I could see it working as an events thing, right? Like a unique experiences thing that is a social experience. Like this weekend, I don't know what to do. And so, maybe I can find something interesting happening. I can see that. Yeah. And bro, I would say you're trying to create case study. No, you're not trying to create a case study. Case study is what you will create at the end once you've gone through this entire process. Honestly, I think where you should be starting is a structured brainstorm. What we're doing right now is we're doing an unstructured brainstorm, right? I'm just telling you random thoughts that are coming to my head. You should do a structured brainstorm. You think about all this, but put together a fig jam and actually put some structure, right? So add these things as notes, talk to ChatGPT, get interesting stuff, like put this whole perspective together, do a structured brainstorm, and then figure out what your next step could be, right? My suggestion Go for a prototype, right? My suggestion for when it comes to challenging concepts, guys, this is an important one. Okay, for stuff like this, a lot of people start, most people never finish. Why? It's because the more interesting a problem statement, the more challenging it also is, right? If this was a simple problem statement, it might probably exist out there, but you're trying to create something new. And so it's challenging. And so you might go through a very heavy design process that doesn't lead anywhere. And you don't want that. My suggestion for you is do a prototype first design process. Prototype first design process. What's a prototype first design process? Instead of going through the standard steps of research, information architecture, wireframing, this thing, I would say find the shortest path to a prototype, which could just be a visual of a screen, how it works. Like do your structured brainstorming, but do a prototype, like get to a prototype, right? You're not really doing this as a client project or something. You're trying to test the viability of an idea. And so create a first shitty looking prototype, but it has the core concepts in place. It has the core, you consider the human elements, you kind of consider this trust and whatever, and you have a version of it that comes together. Uh, some reference, another reference for you, 8 Club. Yeah, I downloaded the app recently. It's a really cool design. 8 Club is the startup by not triple IT, IIT Roorkee folks. They do curated events, right? So it's not a one-on-one matching. But yeah, this food thing I was describing, very similar to what this app does. So this is a good reference you could check out. Yeah, food clubs. That could be an interesting angle. But from a human perspective, what you're doing is one-to-one matching. That's one possibility. Explore this possibility, prove to yourself that it can work, or prove to yourself that it can't work, but have a strong opinion. One-on-one matching, I don't know if it works, but try it out. Then group versus group, can I do that? Or 1:n, one person creates it, people have to join. Or group would be n:n. Is there something interesting you can do with content? Is there something interesting you do with chat or something? I don't know. But yeah, it's cool. Oh, this is a dope. I like this. Take a simple idea and take it seriously. Take it very, very seriously. You know, you realize most people would not think this deep. They'll be like, अरे पागल है क्या? ज़ोमैटो पे क्यों करेंगे? मैं ज़ोमैटो पे तो मैं बटर चिकन ऑर्डर करता हूँ। क्यों करेंगे? अरे पागल हो गया है, like what do you guys, the whole purpose of design is so you get to solve these interesting puzzles and you get paid for these puzzles the better you get at solving them, right? That's so fun. And so take a simple idea. The simple idea is, can people meet over food? Think about this, right? Airbnb did something very revolutionary, which is, why would you trust a stranger into your house? But they did it, right? They created this new behavior. So the idea was very simple though, which is, can every, I'm walking down the street and I see hotels, but can the houses also become places I can book? Such a simple idea. Or I have an extra room. Can I host strangers? Such a simple idea, but they built an entire thing around it. So food clubs, yeah, that's a very interesting problem statement, but not an easy one. But then that's what makes it interesting, right? It's an interesting puzzle to solve. Okay, how about this idea? I think you're trying to post a link. By default, I think YouTube blocks links for spam. So I don't know what idea you're talking about. Yeah. Hmm. What happens after the cohort? Virat says. Um, the main thing is, if you're somebody who is not a designer, no design friends, can't have design conversations, don't know the vocabulary, never worked on a project yourself, never interacted with a mentor, never never actually went through a proper design process, or actually there's no such thing as a proper design process, but never went through a design process, never been in that zone. What happens is you get that experience, but I know you're asking practically. A lot of things. You become a part of the 10K Designers alumni, number one. But I can just show you. What happens after the cohort? Go to 10kdesigners.com/UI-UX. We have a section on placements, if that's what you're asking about. We have a few different ways we do it. We have a very unconventional approach to placements. Honestly, I believe this whole model of placements is outdated. Who the fuck, right? But there is something interesting that can replace it, right? And so we have an interesting thing around that. But what happens after the cohort is you become a part of the alumni. We have this saying, which is cohort one's community forever. Basically, what that means is we will invite you to future events, um, the problem statements. So, for example, the new assignment problem statements we're getting, we're going to source the Y Combinator directories and find some awesome problem statements. We get fresh problem statements every cohort. That we share it with alumni as well. We'll be doing it. So yeah. But usually, what happens after the cohort is people realize, people build a portfolio, they start posting content, they get an internship, they officially can call themselves a designer. So, confidence, they build the skills, and yeah, they end up getting a job, or within their job, they end up switching to design, or you know, they get an increment, they switch to a different company. That's usually what happens. What also happens is you start seeing the world differently, very differently, right? So little bit, you stop being 100% consumer of these platforms, you little bit start seeing the patterns behind it. And honestly, I think that's super interesting as well. Yeah. But these says, should designers code and build their own ideas? I think they should, but I can't give general advice. uh, I think they should. Personally, would I do it? I would, for the right idea, for the right time. But if you've never done it before, you definitely should, right? Some of you would be surprised to see how good the AI coding tools have become. So if you're a designer, which is, you know what you want, you can really make these coding AIs execute for you. Now, I know developers will disagree, and you have very good reasons for disagreeing, but that's the world we live in right now. So I think designers should code and build their own ideas, um, especially as things are progressing. Definitely, in the previous stream, we talked about this idea where designers, developers, product managers, we might all of these might just combine into a universal single role. I don't know if it will, but it does seem to be going that way. Right? Product managers are really good at articulating what the product should be, how this goes into the market, um, what the behaviors might be like, what metrics we need to track against the business. Designers also good at this, but what they're really exceptionally good at is converting just ideas into a prototype that you can actually use. And developers, of course, bring this to life. So there is some convergence happening of these roles. Yeah. Ayman says, "What's up, Ayman? Got selected. Cool. Working on some projects part time since 3 years. Do you think the cohort will help me?" My main question, Ayman, is what do you want to do that you don't have not been able to do so far? And I can tell you if the cohort will help you, right? So, for example, if I just had to guess, you've been working 3 years freelance. Some direct things it can help you with is, number one, improve your process. I'm sure you have some process that you do. We will show you behind the world real projects that you might not have had a chance, right? So, for example, in my case, I started my career freelancing as well, but I had no clue how design teams operate. So I finally got that opportunity when I joined a company, right? So you will get that experience. You will be able to meet some folks for sure. So building a design network, either it's peers or mentors, that's a big part of the cohort, right? It's not a watch videos pre-recorded. Like, I'm every single Wednesday and Saturday coming live in front of you and going through this whole thing, coming up with examples, interacting, there's activities. So it's very hands-on. That's one thing I will say. Will it help you? Well, I think it can in terms of network. If you want to get better opportunities, it can show you what some expert freelancers are doing in the field. But beyond that, I would say take a look at the website. If those things are valuable to you, and if you have the time, It's intensive, right? It's 4-month cohort and live sessions. I am showing up every week. I expect you to do the same. Accountability, you have accountability for showing up. I have accountability for showing up every week as well, right? So it's not going to be, "Arey, I joined the Udemy course and I'm never going to watch it." It's going to have accountability. So if you think those things are useful, consider it. Yeah. Virat says, don't belong to Bangalore, joining C10. Nice. How can I get opportunities to meet and connect with mentors and peers? You will have folks from your city, right? So definitely you can do some, what do you say? You can definitely do physical meetups in your city. Very likely you're going to have mentors and members in your city. Besides that, if you want to make a trip to Bangalore, you can definitely do that. But bro, actually, last all cohorts have not been physical. We have an amazing online program, right? This whole simulation that we've designed. So it all happens virtually. You'll be meeting these mentors on Zoom. You'll be having calls, group calls. You'll be in Discord. They're going to be leaving Figma comments for you. You're going to be going implementing that feedback. You're going to be able to connect with past alumni who are there, talk to them, ask them about how their job is, ask questions to a broad audience, get it answered. Of course, every week I'll be teaching you some stuff. So, short answer, virtually, but also in person. And you don't have to be in Bangalore. Only 30%, I would say, maybe, if I had to guess, of every cohort, 30 to 40% of folks are from Bangalore. But that's not a necessity at all. And we have city based WhatsApp groups. So every city we have a different WhatsApp group. So you'll probably have that. Yeah. Okay, guys. I really got to go eat. I also got to go head back home. I'm in the office right now. Have an awesome year ahead. I'm glad we were able to do this final stream of the year. Of course, I hope you go and read some of these articles. I wish I could have put together a fig jam. Not today, but maybe I'll do it some other time. Um, Hope you have a good new year. My plans, I'm probably going to be at home, but let's see. I like last minute plans. Have a great year. Take some time to rest, relax. See you next year. Let's make something interesting happen, right? See you somewhere else on the internet. Bye bye. Goodbye, 2024. See ya.